Hey there and welcome back. This is the first video in a multi-part series all about customizing the Payload Admin Panel. In this first video, we're going to talk about how you can theme your admin panel, adding your own colors and styles and your own logo and icon. We are going to start off by creating a new payload project. And all that we have to do for that is to call npx create-payload-app. Now this will ask us for a project name. I'm going to call it admin panel customization. I'm going to choose the blank project template and a MongoDB database, and I'm just going to leave it as my local MongoDB database that I have running. Now this will install all required dependencies. And as soon as that is done, we can cd into our admin panel customization project and do code dot to open up VS Code. All right, so here's our freshly installed payload project. Now what we can do is we can go to terminal, new terminal, and just start up our development server by running npm run dev. This will start a development server on localhost 3000. So I'm just going to go into my browser, type localhost 3000, and this should greet me with the new payload welcome page that hasn't existed until now, but the team has added it. Welcome to your new project. And we can either choose to go to our admin panel or read the documentation. I'm just going to click on admin panel, which will redirect me to localhost 3000/admin, where I have to create my first user. I'm going to create that one real quick. And now we have access to our admin panel. Now, since we will be using Tailwind CSS to customize our admin panel, and first and foremost to customize our own components that we will add in later videos, we are now going to set up Tailwind CSS for our payload project. Now, Tailwind CSS has released a new version, version 4, so the setup now differs a little bit from the older version in version 3. However, there's still a setup guide that Tailwind CSS provides us, and if we follow this one, you will find it in the description. It is still very straightforward to install Tailwind. The first thing that we have to do, we can skip the first one because that's just creating the project. First thing we have to do is install our dependencies. So I'm going back into VS Code and I'm just killing our development server for now. I'm doing pnpm. So watch out if you're just pasting that command in because we have to use pnpm. I'm hitting enter and that will install my dependencies. The next thing that we have to do is we need to create a post.css config file. So we'll go back into our project. In our root folder, I'm going to create a new file called post.css.config.mjs. And in here, I'm going to paste the config that we get from the installation guide. Now, next up, it recommends us to just do an add import Tailwind CSS. We can do this for our front-end part, but this will cause issues if we try to import it into our payload admin panel. The reason for that is Payload uses a different way to style the admin panel than Tailwind CSS. So Tailwind CSS comes with a so-called preflight in the base layer, which will override certain styles that Payload has by default. So what we want to do instead of just importing this Tailwind class, this Tailwind layer, we want to split it up. So let's go back to our project and we will create a new folder in our source directory called styles. In theory, you can put the styles file everywhere you want, but this keeps it nice and separated. In our styles, we're going to create two files. One of them we can call globals.css. It doesn't really matter. And the other one I'm going to call payload styles.css. Now, the reason why we're going to create two files is we have two use cases for Tailwind. The first one will be our front end, so our website that we built. And the second one will be payload styles that will be imported into our payload admin panel. And as I said, we need different types of imports for the front end and the back end for both of them to work as best as possible. So for now, the payload styles file is more relevant since we're going to talk about customizing the admin panel. What I'm going to paste in here is a more advanced way to import Tailwind CSS. So it pretty much replaces this one-liner import Tailwind CSS, which we can just copy, by the way, and use in our global CSS file for the front end. Because in the front end, we don't have the issue that Tailwind will overwrite any styles. So let me just quickly explain what we're doing here. We're basically importing the theme layer, base layer, and utilities layer separately. And that gives us the option to just comment out the base layer and the pre-flight that Tailwind comes with. Like I said, to make it work with payload. The only thing left that we have to do now is we need to go into app, payload, and in our payload layout file, we will have to do import. And we're going to say add styles payload styles.css. And this is everything that we need to do in order to set up Tailwind in version 4 with a payload project. There's one adjustment that I would recommend you to add if you're planning to use dark mode. Now, by default, Tailwind checks the browser setting and decides whether it should display the dark classes or the normal classes. The issue with that is in payload, we can go to our user settings. Sorry, I killed the development server. Let me just restart that. In payload, we can go into our user settings and we can either set the admin panel to be displayed automatically, light or dark mode, or we can choose to enforce either light or dark mode. So right here we have it set to automatic, but I can also enforce light mode. The issue with that is Tailwind won't recognize that. And therefore, if I, for example, my browser is in dark mode right now, but I have forced the payload admin panel to display light mode. And this will cause issues with Tailwind because Tailwind will still display dark mode. To fix this, all we have to do is add one simple line. We are going back into our payload styles.css file. I'm going to add a custom variant, which basically tells Tailwind to look for a data theme dark class, which payload uses to steer the dark mode. And if that data theme dark is existent, it will switch to dark mode. Now that Tailwind is set up and ready to go, we can move to our next steps, which will be adding our own logo and icon to the payload admin panel. To demonstrate this, I have created a few demo logos. So this is our demo icon. This is our demo logo, which includes the icon and a text for dark mode. And then there is one for light mode, which includes the dark text. Now to add those custom logos and icons, we can't import them directly into payload as images. What we have to do instead is we have to create a custom component that includes this image and renders this image, and then use this custom component to replace the default logo and icon. In order to do this, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it components. And in that, I'm going to create a new folder called payload. Like I said, you can structure it differently. That's just how we like to do it. And in here, I'm just going to paste in 2 React files. Now, this is very straightforward. All that this component does is it returns either the normal logo, so just the normal logo with the dark text, or it returns the logo for dark mode with the white text. And here's how we steer the visibility with Tailwind. So we pretty much say the normal logo should be visible, but if it's dark mode, it should be hidden. And the dark mode logo should be hidden, but if it's dark mode, it should be shown. And all that we render here is a Next.js image component that includes and imports the logos from the assets folder. Exactly same thing with the icon. However, since we only have one icon, we don't need any dark mode specifically. We just always show the icon since it's red. Now, in order to use those custom components in Payload, we just have to go ahead into our payload config file. And in the admin property, we're going to add a components object. And I'm going to say graphics. And here we can specify logo and icon. Now, this might be new if you're coming from version 2, but in version 3, we don't directly import custom components. Instead, we specify the import path as a string. So what I would do here is I would do /components /payload /logo. And since we have a default export, we don't need to specify anything else. Now, if this would be a named export, so if it wouldn't be a default export, what we would have to do is we would have to add a hash and add the export name after our path. I'm just going to kick that out again for now because we will use the default export. And we are going to do the exactly same thing with our icon. So I'm just going to say /components /payload icon. And now let's go back into our admin panel and see if this already shows our custom icons. I'm just going to refresh. So at the top, you can already see our custom logo in place. Let me just log out really quick. And yes, as you can see, it's showing our custom logo. Let me try dark mode. So I'm going to log in again. I'm going to switch to enforced dark mode, log out. And as you can see, now it's showing a white text. And that's pretty much all you have to do to add your own logo and icon. One issue that you might be facing if you add custom components like these, that they might not show up immediately, because Payload uses something called an import map to optimize performance and pretty much not include and not import anything that is unnecessary. So if that happens to you and the custom logos are not shown, what you can do is you can do pnpm payload generate import map. If you run this command, this will regenerate all imports and payload, and this will make sure that the custom components and the custom components that you just added are also shown. Let's move on to the last part of this video, which is further customizing the admin panel with our own colors and our own appearance, like maybe borders or rounded edges. For this, I'm just going to switch back to light mode to make it a little bit more simple. Now, generally speaking, the Payload Admin Panel is styled with certain CSS classes, and all of those CSS classes can be overwritten. If we check out the admin panel in our console, and for example, we select one of those cards, as you can see, it has multiple classes. One of them is button, but then the other one is card __ click, BTN, so button icon style without border, button size medium, etc. We can also check out the heading, which has a class of dashboard label. We can check out our sidebar here, which has, depending on the exact element that you're targeting, has nav scroll or just nav as a class. And all of those classes can be overwritten. Now, for your inspiration, we actually have a theme generator, which you can find here. I will put the link in the description. One caveat is that this theme generator is still not updated to version 3. It still applies to version 2. So it will not work 100% with the CSS that you can generate with this generator. However, you can take a look at the CSS code that is generated and pick a few out that might be relevant for you. For example, you can adjust the theme accent color, which we're going to do in a second, or you can style the hamburger wrapper, so the nav button in the sidebar, the nav bar in general, a dashboard card, pretty much everything. To actually style this, it is very easy. We just have to go back into our styles, and in this case, our payload styles, and I'm just going to paste in a small selection of adjustments that we're going to apply. Now, what we are doing here is we're changing the theme elevation colors. And also I'm just changing 3 variants of it. So there's obviously more than just 100, 200, and 800. There's everything in between. But to make it simple, it's just 3 colors for now. And the second thing that we're applying is we're applying a background color to our card. So our cards in our dashboard, which is theme elevation 100. In this case, it's this soft rose red color. We are also going to apply a border with a 1 pixel solid with our a little bit more red color. And we will also set the border radius to 1 pixel, which will get rid of the rounded corners and make them corny. I don't know if that's how it's called. So if we just save that and go back to our admin panel, it should have hot module reload. And voila, you can see we've changed a lot of things. Since we updated our theme elevation colors, those colors are variables and they're used across the entire admin panel. So if you change and adjust those, you will have a pretty big effect across the entire admin panel. So as you can see, we got rid of any border radius, or we just have 1 pixel. We have our red background color. And as you can see, the text is also red. Now, this is obviously not perfect and will require more adjustment, a little bit more work on your end to customize it further. As you can see here, our save button, if it's locked, it has this weird missing contrast. If I adjust it, this will turn readable, but if I hover it, it stays gray. So you will probably have to do a little bit more handwork to actually make it your own. Now, just to show you that we have full control over this, what we can do as well is we can change the border radius to 999 pixels, and that will make it completely round. Now, this will be it for today's video. In the next video, we're going to dive a lot deeper into further customizing our admin panel by creating our own custom Next.js server components or client components to fetch data from Payload directly, display it, give you more options and more flexibility to interact with Payload itself. If you do have any questions, please let us know in the comments below. And apart from that, take care and see you in the next video.